Welcome to this debut episode of the Insurgent Mindset miniseries. I'm Rondo Moses. I'm the managing partner of Insurgents Group North America. And as a resident of New York, last week's political earthquake hit close to home, and I want to talk about it. Last week, New York's Democratic primary was held, and the establishment candidate, Governor Andrew Cuomo, a three-term former governor of New York, son of the late Mario Cuomo, also a former governor, three-term former governor of New York, so a political heavyweight family, lost to an upstart, young, bold, grassroots-led candidate by the name of Zohran Mamdani, a 33-year-old stated Democratic socialist who's a state assemblyman from Queens. And this election really turned out to be a big wake-up call for not only the political establishment, but it has key messages for business leaders who are operating in ever-evolving environments with legacy mindsets. So the real purpose of this podcast is to talk about the contrast between incumbent thinking and the insurgent mindset. So Zohran Mamdani, as I said, 33-year-old state assemblyman, was largely successful for three reasons. One, he had a focus on customer proximity. So Mamdani was out pressing the flesh, talking to potential voters on buses, attending tenant meetings, and also, as they say, in the streets. He had real conversations with everyday New Yorkers about the issues that were most important to them. And those conversations gave him a lot of insights that he was able to use to further refine his messaging and to connect with voters. I think the takeaway for business leaders here is to ask yourself, are you close enough to your customers? Can you feel and hear what's most important to them, the problems that they're dealing with, and how you can help them? Because if you're not close enough to your customers, you should be worried because your competitors or maybe a potential new upstart will get close to your customers. The second key takeaway from this mayoral race was around innovation and communication. Zohran Mamdani's platform included freezing rents for tenants living in rent-stabilized apartments, free buses, creating public grocery stores, one public grocery store in every borough in New York City, universal childcare for children under 5 years old, and the creation of more public affordable housing. So not only was his policies innovative, the way he approached communication was also innovative. So Zohran did not respond to the traditional media news cycles. He was online and offline, but he also leveraged non-traditional platforms like social media. He was an expert on TikTok and short form video. And this worked to engage New Yorkers of all stripes, but importantly, he was able to generate so much buzz and enthusiasm amongst the younger generations. I think the data shows that the percentage of young voters between the ages of 23 and 36 was higher than traditionally we would see in a New York City election, let alone in a primary. The key takeaway for business leaders here is really think about your communication. Are you communicating boldly enough? And make sure that you are actually communicating where your audiences are, not relying on traditional modes of communication. The third takeaway, I think lesson learned from Zohran Mamdani's campaign is about the importance of hypermobilization and agility. Zohran Mamdani started his campaign with 5 organizers. I think there was 5. But by the primary last week, he had amassed a volunteer base of 50,000 canvassers, and they knocked on over 1.5 million doors. He also was able to pull together 27,000 donors, small donors, to give to his campaign. Zohran Mamdani moved fast, and his campaign created momentum, as I mentioned, online and offline. When he was a few months ago, he was polling at less than 1%. in the race. Andrew Cuomo was, of course, the favorite. And then last week, he actually won the Democratic primary. So the takeaway for business leaders really is you've got to move quickly. You got to make sure that your teams are aligned and agile, and you must act before you have to act. And in some cases, before you're ready, but also before you're forced to act. So in closing, the takeaways from this election, the last week's New York mayoral election, primary election, is that businesses have to think about whether they are an incumbent organization, and they can't have to think about whether they think that incumbency equals relevance. It does not. In fact, incumbency without agility makes you irrelevant. So the question you as a business leader need to ask yourself again in closing is, are you really focused on the past, or are you building a future for your organization and your customers? Thank you for listening to the Insurgent Mindset mini-series. Until next time, stay bold, stay grounded, and stay insurgent.